neuroscientist, I think about and talk about the brain a lot. So in order to frame my 4-minute conversation, I'm going to give you a 1-minute neuroscience lesson. So this is the brain. Okay, everybody has one, 100 billion neurons, each one making between 10 and 20,000 connections. It makes it the most complex entity on the known universe, and we all have one. And I can guarantee very few things, but I can guarantee the brain you walked in with today is not the brain you're going to go home with, because you have sat through a series of highly salient and relevant communications, undermining which are a series of emotional responses that are at the core of the talk I'm going to give. So this is your spinal cord. This is what communicates with the rest of our bodies and end organs, and also takes information back as a return path and gives us our experience of the world. We don't feel emotions in our brain. We don't say, wow, my prefrontal cortex just went off, or ooh, my amygdala really just fired. Right? We talk about our hearts leaping with joy, our skin crawling with fear. So our spinal cord connects to our hindbrain, which is represented by my palm, which is sometimes referred to as the reptilian brain, because we share these structures with reptiles. And it really modulates very simple things. Am I awake? Am I asleep? Is my body temperature the right way? Am I able to activate the kinds of energy I need for the world? The hindbrain then connects to the midbrain, represented by my thumb, sometimes referred to as the mammalian brain, because we share these structures in common with mammals. And this is where emotion happens. Sometimes referred to as the subcortex, sometimes referred to as the limbic system. And then my fingers are the forebrain, which is the neocortex, uniquely complex, uniquely human. Now here's the key to the model. This is evolution. So the tip of my fingertip is the most highly evolved part of the brain, called the prefrontal cortex. What does it do? It wraps around and touches what part of the brain? Who was paying attention? The emotion centers, right? So we've actually fundamentally evolved to get information from our emotion centers and make use of that. Now, these are two brains interacting. Now, my academic work was as studying how patients and doctors communicate and connect with one another, and how underlying empathy are these emotional synchronous moments. And we have been wired over millions of years to connect with one another. What is happening today is we are now connecting to one another through technologies. And that is fundamentally changing the way in which we relate to one another. Now, I'm going to talk very briefly about 3 themes that I think impact the future of advertising. Number 1, and this has been alluded to, is that shift from digital immigrants to digital natives. And we have studied these people very carefully in a large study we did with Time Warner, where we literally followed natives and immigrants in their home wearing a biometric belt, measuring passively their emotional responses with a point of view camera. We could see everything they saw and coded every media experience they had across those 2 generations. And we saw a transformational shift in the time spent with digital platforms, the attention span, I'll give you a hint, it was shorter, 35%, and the emotional consequences. These natives do not tolerate boredom at all. As soon as emotions drop, they flip over to something else. And they're constantly shifting back and forth. And as Jeff alluded to, a lot of multi-platforms going on, and we're going to have to deal with that. So that's shift number 1. Shift number 2 is that we also are seeing over and over again, not surprising, a movement from a single platform to multi-platform. So immigrants compared to natives are spending 35% less time, natives spending 35% more time with multi-platform shifting. And we define that, by the way, there's no such thing as multitasking. All you're doing is shifting back and forth and back and forth. Neuroscience is very clear about that. The data is also very clear. People who multitask think they're more productive than they actually are. So we have to be careful. Another timeout from a screen here. But they're doing it anyway because the temptation is strong, because you get this emotional high from doing it. You feel more productive, so you do it more. So the shifting from single platform to multi-platform is going to have huge impact for how we communicate. And then finally, and this was alluded to also earlier, and that is the shift from linear storytelling to nonlinear storytelling. Right? So if you have a world where people are constantly shifting platforms, who get bored very, very easily, and are constantly looking for the next emotional high, you're going to have a hard time telling stories to them. And I think the good news is they are the future storytellers. They are going to grow up, and they're going to tell the stories to their own generation, and they're going to figure out how to do it. So what are we at Innerscope doing about understanding this? Well, as Joe mentioned, the key is relevance. And he's actually a big reason why I'm standing up here today, because he gave a talk at the ARF in 2006 that I was at, and he said the important thing isn't number of eyeballs and reach and frequency, it's engagement. And I went back to my business partner and said, I think we're measuring engagement. Right? We're measuring non-conscious emotions. And what is engagement? We now hold the patent from a biometric perspective on what that is. It's attention to something that emotionally impacts you. And you need both of those. Number one, you've got to be paying attention to it, because there's no chance in hell that information is going to get into your brain. But number two, you've got to connect with it on an emotional level. And I'll leave you with a distinction. This is one of my little educational moments I think is important. There is a difference between salience and relevance. If I wave my hand like this, that is a salient gesture. You're all going to look up. What's he going to do? It's not relevant. That has absolutely no meaning to you. Hopefully, the last 4 minutes have been emotionally engaging and somewhat meaningful. Thank you very much.